Book jacket design document in InDesign, you need a couple of files from Blackboard. So in the final project folder, you need the book designer jacket template as a PDF, and then you need an ISBN barcode. So let me just go ahead and open up the book jacket template. Now this is a PDF. You can download it. I'm just going to view it in my browser window, and I'm going to detach this tab and place it in another spot. And then the barcode. And this is something you'll need to download, so you might want to create a project folder. So I'm going to create a folder called with my last name underscore VCD 1015 underscore final project or final. And how about an images folder? And then let's save our barcode inside of the images folder. All right. Okay, next thing we need to do is open up InDesign. Okay, in InDesign, we're going to set up this document based on a template. And this is a standard template. Don't worry about if you have a book, the actual size of the book. It could be different dimensions. The spine could be wider or skinnier. But we're just going to use this standard just to present a concept. So we're just going to follow the measurements on here to create our document. So what this says is that our book jacket is going to be 9 inches and 9¼ inches high and 20.095 inches wide. So let's go ahead and create a new document and take a look at our units. So the units of measure are pixels on mine. I want to make sure that's inches, and actually I have already have this set up correctly. No, let's see, 9.25. Okay, so I demoed this earlier. 9.25. So height is 9.25, width is 20.095 inches. Uncheck facing pages, you don't need that. You can leave the columns at the default, but the margins, if that's not visible, you want to click this down arrow to unfold that. I'm going to put a 1/2 inch margin on mine. That's not a set rule. It's not part of our template, but it's good practice to have margin guidelines and adhere to those as much as possible. Maybe you want your margins to be 1/4 inch. Let me do 0.25. All right. And bleed and slug. We don't need a slug, but we do need a bleed on here. So again, if we set up a bleed of 1/8 inch, which is standard for print, then 0.125 is the equivalent of 1/8 inch. So you want to make sure you have that all the way around, and then hit create. Okay, so we have our basic document with the correct dimensions. If something had gone wrong and it wasn't correct for whatever reason, and actually I don't like this margin, I think I am going to put it back to 1/2 inch. So what I'm going to do is go to the File menu and go to Document Setup, and just I'll change my, oh, what do I need? Okay, so actually cancel and go to margins and columns. All right, so I'm going to change my margins to 1/2 inch. So you want to make sure that your document is a CMYK color build for print. One way to check that is just go to the swatches window and make sure that all the colors that are placed in your swatches window by default are set up as CMYK percentages. If that's not the case, you want to switch this over to CMYK. So you can do that by going to the color window, and mine is CMYK, but let's say yours was RGB. Then you would go to this options button and just choose CMYK. So for example, mine's set up as RGB by default. If it were, I would make sure I'm on CMYK. So just make sure that that is how your colors are set up. Okay, let's go back to our template and take a look at how this book jacket is constructed. So we've got a front flap, a back cover, front cover, and a spine. And we have some lines here that are indicating where these different parts of the book jacket are going to be folded. So in the middle here we've got solid lines that indicate the fold of the spine, and on the outer edges of the front and back covers we've got these dash lines that indicate the fold of the where the jacket is going to fold around the boards of the book. So we've got a little bit of an inconsistency. So we've got solid lines for the spine indicating a fold, and on these outer edges we have these dash lines indicating the fold. The solid lines that are beyond those dash lines on both sides of our template indicate an internal bleed. That means that any image or color that is applied to the front and back covers is going to go beyond the fold and go about 1/8 of an inch beyond the fold. So we have to keep this in mind when we're laying out the book. So let's go ahead and start placing guidelines that will correspond with the measurements on this template. So we're back in our InDesign document, and the first thing I'm going to do is place a guideline for the bleed of the back cover, and that's at 3 inches. So you have to make sure that your rulers are visible, and if they're not, you want to go to the View menu and go to Hide Rulers. So you want to make sure that Hide Rulers is unchecked. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead from the left-hand ruler, drag out a guideline, click and drag to the 3-inch point, or the 3-inch mark. And we can see the location of our margin, and we can see the location of our guide up here also. So let's do the, this is for the bleed of the back cover. Let's do the one for the fold. So drag another guideline out at 3 1/4 inches. Make sure it's 3.25. And then we'll go ahead and do the next one, which is for the left-hand side of the spine. And that's at 9.4375. So let's try to place that as accurately as we can. 9.4375, and it's actually very hard to do. I've got 4.275 and 4.475. So let's just let that go. And then up here in this little text field, let's go ahead and make sure we have that exactly correct. 9.4375 inches. Okay. For the next guideline for the spine, we're going to do 10.6575. Again, it's really hard to place, so let's go ahead and just make sure that it's correct up in this little text field. Hit Tab to enter. And now we'll do the guideline for the fold of the front cover. That's at 16.845 inches. So I'm close, but I'm going to go up here, 16.845. And then we need another guideline for the bleed of the front cover. So drag that out, and that's at 17.095. Okay, and earlier when we were looking at the template, I said that this bleed area for the front and the back cover is 1/8 of an inch, and it's actually more than that. So it's got to be wide enough that it will completely cover the edge of the spine of the hardcover book, and then go a little bit beyond it. So it's actually more than 1/8 of an inch. All right, so this is correct. What we need to do next is we need to make sure that we have some, we're talking about an internal bleed. We should have some internal margin guides too. So we need a margin on the internal parts of the front and the back cover. So we can go ahead and drag those guidelines out. We want to keep our margins consistent, so this margin is 1/2 inch. If I want to make my internal margin on the back cover, my left-hand internal margin on the back cover, 1/2 inch from this fold line, then I would drag it out and I would try to match it up. I would try to measure 1/2 inch on my ruler, my top ruler. But the problem is that the measurements are kind of odd, and it doesn't really align. So it's really hard to determine what 1/2 inch is. So what I can do is I can go up to the corner of the rulers, and I can click and drag to this guideline. And when I do that, it sets my ruler to 0 at that point where I let go of the mouse. So now I can accurately measure 1/2 inch just using these rulers. So I'm going to go ahead and drag my guideline out 1/2 inch. And I'm going to do the same thing over for the right hand margin of the back cover. Set my ruler at 0 at the guideline for the fold, and then I have 1/2 inch that I can drag to. Okay, and now I'll do that for the front cover, same thing. Oops. Okay, set my ruler at 0, drag 1/2 inch margin, and now this one too. Okay, so now we've got quite a few guidelines set up on our document. You might also want to drag some margin guides on the flaps, but I'll let you decide on that because you don't have a lot of room on the flaps. So maybe I'd make my margins 1/4 inch or something like that, but I'll leave that up to you. Okay, we've got a lot of guidelines here, but we want to make sure that we understand what's what. So again, these are going to be the guidelines for the fold of the spine. This is the guideline for the fold of the front flap, and this is the bleed guideline. This is the guideline for the fold of the back cover, and again another internal bleed guideline. Okay, at this point we ought to save our document before we go any further. So I just am going to check in Blackboard and see what it says. How should I save my document? Okay, so it's our last name, VCD1015_final. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and we want to make sure that we save it in our project folder, or our assignment folder that we created. So VCD 1015 final is a assignment folder. Inside of this I have my images folder with my barcode that I downloaded earlier. And let's save our document. Not inside the images folder, just inside of our assignment folder.